Snowy Owl stampers. And again, this is through to the end of October. All right, so we are going to be using the Decorated with Happiness bundle. I love this bundle. I love the two-step stamping in it, and I love the dies. This was not on my wish list when this catalog came out, but I love it. So this is on page 27 of the mini catalog, July to December. And the paper we're using is on page 29 of that catalog. It's the Painted Christmas, and it's 12 by 12 with 6 double-sided designer series sheets. That's a mouthful. This is a returning designer paper. We had it last year. They didn't retire it, and it returned with this mini catalog. So I'm going to set this off to the side, and I just want to bring in the paper real quick and show you it. I just love it. I love the colors of it. You have crumb cake, early espresso. You have evening evergreen, soft succulent, pear pizzazz. Even some seafoam, cherry cobbler, which is my absolute, I think, favorite color. And we are going to be using this as our paper this evening. You have some bells here, and then I'm not even sure, almost like a herringbone. And then if we flip these over, again, some very, very pretty prints. I really like this paper. So with that said, we are going to get started. So I'm going to bring in the first card to show you that we're going to make. It's the bookbinding card, and this is 4 1/4 by 11. And it is scored at 5 1/2 and then 4 1/4. So don't worry about the measurements because there will be a link right down below the video tomorrow morning where you can go over to my website. You can see supplies, you can see measurements, and there'll be a tutorial there for you, or written instructions. Now, I do want to explain one thing in using this card. This is one of the cards I did with my Make and Take card class yesterday. I had this card planned out for a while, and in preparing this card, I used the gold foil and cut this bow along with like the stem or the string that would support the ornament. And in the midst of all that, I lost a die. Have any of you ever lost a die? Well, it's driving me nuts, and I have been looking for it for 5 days and cannot find it anywhere. I know it's going to show up, but it's going to show up when I don't need it. So this is our card. So let's get started, and I'm going to bring in my supplies for us to make our first card. So, and this has a smudge on it from ink that I laid it up against, but I'm not going to worry about it because this is all going to be covered. So you have a 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 4 and at 5 1/2. This isn't even sitting here, right? 5 1/2 and 4 1/8. So we're going to go ahead and fold this, and I am going to burnish it with my bone folder. And then we are going to go ahead and put down, I'm going to use some green glue here, or multi-purpose glue. You can use your Stampin' Seal Plus or whatever your favorite adhesive is choice. Just make sure it's a sturdy adhesive, and you want to stay within the fold lines of this. And I'm just going to go ahead then and close it and give it a good push because I want that to stay sealed well. And then I'm going to take on my other fold and fold it back, and I'm just going to burnish it. So here's our book fold, or book binding fold. So these will be covered, and this is the inside of our card. Now the next pieces, and I've done a lot of the pre-cut work up until I want to show you about the dies. So this square is crumb cake. It is 4 by 4. And I have one for the inside and one for the outside. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to adhere these to the card. Now, I'm going to have a nice edge around it. And I'm just going to slide that, which is why I like the multi-purpose glue, because it allows me to slide and get this even. And I'm kind of looking, don't want to get my head in there. So I just want to straighten this out a little bit and more towards the binding of the card. There we go. And now we're going to do the same for the inside. I hope you are all having a great day. It is cold and rainy here in Cleveland, to the point where we had ice when I was driving earlier this morning, instead of rain hitting the windshield. And I actually put on a winter coat, which just killed me to do, because I'm not quite ready for that. So we're going to move this off, and then we have a strip that is, let me see, 1 inch, and a piece of the designer series paper I showed you that's 7/8 by 3 7/8. So let's go ahead and adhere this. To our crumb cake, and we're going to adhere that to the fold on the book binding part of our card. Okay. Now when I do this, I kind of turn it, so that I'm looking at it from the side. It makes it really easy for me to line the two crumb cakes up so that they're even. Now we're going to set this off so I don't get any ink on it, and I'm going to bring in a piece of, we have 2 pieces of 3 7/8 by 3 7/8, and this is what we're going to do our stamping on. So I'm going to go ahead, and for this one I am going to use I'm going to use Garden Green on this one, sorry, and Pear Pizzazz. And I forgot to bring those over, so I'm just reaching behind me to get them. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to open both of these up so I'm not fussing with them and get ink on my hands any more than I usually do. And I'm going to stamp these both at the same time. And I'm going to stamp them a little bit differently. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp my greeting for the inside of the card. And my greeting for that is going to be from the Decorated with Happiness. It's wishing you a season decorated with happiness and wonder. And I'm going to stamp that in cherry cobbler. So we're going to go ahead and do that, because then we're going to work on our boughs of the Christmas card boughs, the boughs for the Christmas card. Oh my. So I'm just going to stamp this in the middle. And then I'm going to go ahead and close this up for now. Now we're going to bring in the boughs, the tree boughs, and we have two different because they are a two-step stamp. This is the more detailed stamp, and this I'm going to call as the filler or our second step. So I'm going to start off with my garden green. And typically for a large stamp like this, I turn my pad over and I stamp and just lightly until I get that stamp covered. And I like the photopolymer because you can see when you have that covered. Now I am going, because these are photopolymer stamps, I'm going to bring in my piercing mat to stamp on. And I'm going to do the inside piece first. And I'm just going to turn this over, and I just want to get a little bit of these boughs for some decoration. So I'm just going, and I wanted to stamp off. I just want to give it a little bit there. And then I'm going to take my Pear Pizzazz and ink this stamp up. And I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to match or stamp right over it. Now remember, with your two-step stamps, they don't match up perfectly. They're not meant to. It's meant to be more like a filler. And so here's the inside of our card. And you have plenty of room to write a little note or sign it. So let's set that off and let it dry for a minute. And we're going to go ahead and do our other 3 7/8 by 3 7/8. Now in this one, I'm going to go ahead and re-ink it with my garden green. And remember that no two cards are going to look identical. So with this one, I'm going to come across here and just go ahead, and I want to see where I'm going with the light here is reflecting off the acrylic block. So there's one branch. Now I want to re-ink, and I just want to add a little something more up in here. So I'm going to go ahead and ink more of the branch part than the stem. And we can go ahead and close that one up. And I'm just going to come in here, and I'm going to go ahead and ink right over it and press, give it a good press and pick up. Now I'm going to set that one off, and I'm going to come in with my Pear Pizzazz, and I'm going to go in right over that. And I'm going to do the same on these branches. Okay, here's our greenery. So we're kind of done with this one. So let's turn that over. And now I'm going to show you how to do the dies. So let's go ahead, and we're going to adhere this one to the inside of our card. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the multi-purpose glue for that. And again, this one has an 1/8 of an inch border around it. Slide that a little bit and slide this one up just a touch. And we're good. So here's our inside. Now we're going to add our ornaments. And I'm going to bring in a little dish here to show you what I did. Now I did pre-cut these ahead of time, but I want to show you how I did that. Now the ornaments I used were the bell and the little bulb, and then the little like bobble. So those are the ones we're going to be using. And what I did is I had a scrap piece of paper from the Lights Aglow, and I used that for my ornaments. And what I did is I also used our adhesive sheets. So I cut simply a piece that was what I needed to cut the ornaments out, these two, because the bell is going to be out of gold. And I cut a piece of adhesive sheet to match. If you're not, I wanted to show you our adhesive sheets and I can't find it here, but it'll come to me. What you're going to do is I cut a piece to match the back, and I'm simply going to take my stylus from my pick tool and I'm going to peel that off, the backing off, and then I'm going to place it on the back of that piece of designer series paper or cardstock or whatever it is that you're going to die cut. Now, this, you could easily use some glue, but I didn't want to get the glue on my foil, so I chose to go ahead and do this. And I also chose to do it for another reason, which I'll show you in a minute. So then you just place these down and die cut them, and you're going to end up with two die cuts just like this. I did the same thing for the gold. I cut a piece of gold the size I would need of the gold foil, and then I simply took a piece of the adhesive sheet the same size. Let me get that off here. There we go, and it does come off easy. And I pop that on the back. And that's a little bigger than what I needed. So you don't want to be running that through your cut and emboss machine and get it sticky. So I have a pair of scissors that I keep only for cutting dimensionals or cutting the adhesive sheets so that I don't ruin all kinds of scissors. And I keep that one strictly for adhesives. And then you would cut your bell out of this and this little bow that we're going to use on one of the ornaments. And then you'll end up with pieces like that. So I wanted to show you that because I think the adhesive sheets, and you're going to see why, because having lost this die, I didn't have that to use. So I ended up using this Simply Elegant trim that comes in silver and gold. And I'm just going to pull it out for you. And I'm not using the silver today, but I am going to use the gold. And I have a couple pieces here that I'm going to pull in to use, just to use them up, because I don't want to waste them. And using glue to get this on was terrible, but it's really easy to use this when you have the adhesive on the back. Now you notice that I didn't stick this on, and I'm going to show you why, because we're going to use it, our Stamp and Seal Plus to adhere this to the back, and we're going to use the adhesive on the ornaments to adhere to the front. So let's go ahead and do that. And our center one is going to be the bell. So let's go ahead and peel this off. And I'm just going to peel it back to there. and show you what I did for running this through. I took my gold and ran it up, oops, and then ran it down. And what I used was my pick tool to kind of push it down. And I know my fingers are in the way here, but I'm going to push that through the hole. There we go. And get just that little piece. There's a little silver filament there. And I'm going to pull this through to the back. And there we go. So hopefully you can see what that looks like. And then I just backed it up until I got it in the middle, and I press it down against the adhesive right here on the top of the bell and right here on the circle. Okay, and then I simply took my snips and I trimmed that little bit of extra off. All right, so now that is stuck, and we're going to be able to finish peeling this off. And it comes off really easy. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to my card. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put this one in the center and press down, and then flip this over, and I'm going to take my Stampin' Seal Plus and just run a little piece of tape there. And before I press it down, I want to make sure my gold Simply Elegant trim is straight. Press it down, and I'm going to go ahead and snip that off. And it's straight, it's taut, and it's holding well. So now we're going to do that with the other two. So I'm just going to go ahead and peel this back. And I'm going to run this in the back here. Again, press it down securely so it's holding. And you can see it's holding in the middle and at the end. And we're just going to go ahead. I'm going to peel that back. And we're going to, I'm going to go ahead and place this one down. So let's do this one. This one's going to go up. Press it down and then do the same thing. You're just going to flip it over, add a little bit of Stampin' Seal Plus. I want to make sure it's straight. And then just bring it forward over your Stampin' Seal Plus. And then I'm going to trim that off. And there's not a whole lot here to trim. And then our last one, we're going to do the bobble. So it's really easy with that adhesive. And I had to kind of make shift what I was going to do because I had lost my die. So this one, I'm going to go in. What am I doing here? We're going to go over and down. And I'm going to press it on the back. I want to trim that little bit that's coming in below. I might have made a mess of that because this, you have to be careful with the elegant trim. It frays. If you pull one string, it's going to fray really easily. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down a little bit lower, right there. And let's make sure it's still long enough, and it is. And now I'm going to go in and trim that again. So just be careful working with this one, because it does fray. But it's just so pretty. I love using it. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead, and this one I'm going to bring in a little bit lower. So I want to bring that down. And let's put this one here, and again, going to go in a little bit of Stamp and Seal works wonders. And I just want to make sure that's a little bit more taut than it is. So there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to the front now that I have that secure. So I am going to use my multi-purpose glue, because if I go over the Simply Elegant twine, it's going to pull on it and it's going to loosen and come up. So this will give me just a little bit extra oomph as far as adhesive goes to keep that in place. So that was how I kind of made up for losing my die, so that I still had that gold finish look. So I'm going to adhere that down, and then we have a little gold bow that's going to go over that in the center. I wanted that to go over the middle of the bell. So again, using the adhesive, I can place that right in the middle there and just press down. So here's the front of our card, and now I'm going to stamp our greeting. And for our greeting, you could pop it up if you wanted, but I chose to stamp that right on that area, and I could have done it ahead of time, but I didn't. So I would recommend doing it ahead of time, so that if you make a mistake, you can flip over and start. But I'm pretty confident, because I had checked this ahead of time, that my greeting is straight. And we're going to take a deep breath and hope that I do it well. So I'm going to line this up. I try to use my grid paper, and I'm just going to go ahead and press down. And here's our card. So here is the outside, and here's the inside of our bookbinding fold this way. Now, for the second one, I'd love to hear what you think of this. For the second one, I turned it around, and I did it in more of a portrait than a landscape. So let's go ahead and do this one, and we're doing this one in a different color. So I'm going to go ahead and close that just so I don't get it on anything, and move this all out of the way. And the difference in this one is we are going to be doing some heat embossing instead of the two-step stamping. So let me show you that quickly. With these dies, you would stamp the image, and then you would stamp the inside or filling to give it some color, like I have here. But what I chose to do was to stamp the image using Versamark, and I heat embossed using gold. So we're going to go ahead and do that. The other thing that's different here is I used, even though this is cherry cobbler and we don't have cherry cobbler ribbon, I did use the real red, and I thought it looked fine with it. Because there's so little of the red in this designer paper, and I wrapped it around and tied a bow. So let's go ahead and we're going to get started on this card, which I really love. Again, the measurements are all going to be down tomorrow on the link right down below. And this card gets cut a little bit differently. This card is cut at 8.5 by 5.5. It is scored at, supposed to be flipped this way. Sorry about that. It is scored at 3 4 1/8. So what we're going to do with this one is we are going to fold on the 4 1/4, not 4 1/8. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish with my bone folder. Now we can go ahead and fold this one back because it's the part that's open. You notice last time I went ahead and put my adhesive down and then folded back, but it doesn't really matter. So I wanted to show you both ways. So I'm going to go ahead and burnish this, because that is how our card is going to open. And let's go ahead and we're going to use some Stampin' Seal Plus this time. Use whatever adhesive you're most comfortable with and run it right close to those score lines. So now we're going to go ahead and fold that or close it. And I'm just going to give it a good press. And there's our bookbinding fold in a portrait. So with this, we are using 2 different color greens. We are going to be using Evening Evergreen, which is one of my favorites. And I decided to pair it with soft seafoam with the red, which I thought came out really pretty. Soft seafoam is in this, as well as Evening Evergreen. You have some pear pizzazz, and then you have some garden green. So we have all of those greens in here, which I thought made it really easy to pair them up together. So I'm going to go ahead and glue my strip down. And then we're going to, I don't know how all of you are with bows. I'm actually pretty good in tying a bow where you just trim it off, stick a glue dot on it, and put it on the card. But today I decided to wrap that ribbon around my this strip of combined strip of cardstock and designer series paper and tie my bow. That's not good. I'm gonna go ahead and focus on this and not talk quite as much. And here we go. I just need to center that a little bit more, or move it over a little bit more to the right at the top. There we are. So I am going to use the real red ribbon, and I'm going to bring it in here. And I want to be able to give myself enough room with that. So before I get started, I do have some glue on my hands, and I'm going to pull in my sanitizer and put a little bit on there to get that glue off, because I don't want to smear that on my card or my ribbon. And it works really well. If you're not familiar with it, I keep a bottle of it on my desk so that I always have it. So with this, I'm going to run some Stampin' Seal Plus on the back to kind of hold that. And then we're going to go ahead and tie our bow. And I just want to give myself enough ribbon. So with this, I used about 16 inches of ribbon. And I simply ran a couple rows, one at the top and the bottom, and then one in the middle to adhere my ribbon to. So, and I simply laid it down. And I would prefer to have more ribbon that I need than not enough. When I do this, it's easy to trim off. And I just want to make sure I'm right about in the middle. And that looks good. Now I'm going to come around like this, and now I'm going to go ahead and cut off so that I have about an even amount for this. And I know this looks like a lot of ribbon, it is, but again, I'd rather have it be long than short. And I go ahead, I have a piece of paper stuck to my hand. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tie that. I want to make sure it's not really, and I tie to the side, but I want it up in the middle, and you don't want to pull that you cause bowing to your paper. But I do want it to be fairly taut as far as my ribbon goes. Now, I have a very hard time holding on to the ribbon with my finger and tying the bow. So one of the things that works for me is that I take a glue dot and I'm simply going to go in underneath where my bow is or my finger is, and I'm going to stick that there behind, and that secures it so that I can now work on my bow. And I do tie my bow to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap it around. And pull it through. If I can grab a hold of it here. Let's try that again. There it is. Having trouble grabbing it. So just kind of bear with me here. And I'm going to pull it through. So here's the start of my bow. And then I want to just make sure I can get it straightened out as much as possible. And once I tie it from the side, and I really don't like that, the way that's knotted. So let's do this again. I'm going to try this way. I want to make sure my ribbon, I don't like my ribbon to turn. So I try to make sure as I'm pulling it through that I get it in one so that it's flat. always when you're doing it in front of people is when you have the hardest time. So there's my bow. Now that looks really messy and it's large, but now I start working with bringing it, making it smaller and tightening it up. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down, and you can see it's working, just working with it till you get it to the way you want it. And again, I'm going to make it smaller and tighten it up and just keep kind of working with it. And I tend to fuss with my bows a lot until I get them to the point that I like them. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. So now I'm going to trim my ends. And let's trim this one. And I'm gonna take this one down a little bit more. It's just a little too long. All right, and now I'm gonna adhere this to the front of my card. And you can do that with either your Stampin' Seal Plus or your multi-purpose glue. I'm gonna go to my glue. And let's go ahead and adhere this to the book part of, or the book binding part of our card. Once you get it on here, if you need to trim your tails or fuss with the bow a little bit more, you can. And that looks good. And I'm just going to give it a good press down. And now I am going to go ahead and trim this a little bit more. And we're going to leave it like that for now. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to work on the front of our card. So I'm going to grab the rest of our pieces of paper, and I had them here and not sure where I set them. So let's go ahead and open these up. And I am going to bring in my pad, and we're going to open up all of our stamp pads. And here is our pieces and parts. So again, for the front, and pull this in, and for the back, I have the soft seafoam that we're going to use as mats for our basic white. Now again, measurements are going to be down in the front tomorrow, right below the video. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start stamping. And I'm going to stamp both at the same time. And we're going to be using the same stamps as we did as far as the branches go, but we're using different colors. And I cleaned these off right before when I set them aside, but I'm going to do them again because I just want to make sure that I got them good and I don't carry any color over since we've switched colors. So with this one, I'm going to do the Evening Evergreen first. And again, I flip my stamp pad over and I cover. I like that best just because I can see the coverage that I'm getting. and I find that I get less around the edges. And with this one, I'm going to come down. And then I'm going to re-ink, and I'm going to come across. Now, on coming across, I'm going to cut off some of the stem, and I want it to join in from the top, and it's going to stamp off. Let me get that on the pad, and it's going to cross over a little bit. So here's that, and now we're going to come in with our soft seafoam, and we're going to cover it, fill it in. So we have the two-step stamping and the two-tone. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do this one first. And now we're going to do the other one. Now there is some overlap when I go in, and that's okay. It just darkens it up a little bit for that one. So there's our branches. And now we're going to do the inside, and I'm just going to do a branch on the top. So I'm going to ink up, but I'm not going to ink the whole stamp. And I'm going to come in from the top and just add a little branch here. And then I'm going to do this second step. And there's that. Now we're done with our greens. So I'm going to go ahead and close those up so that we don't get them on anything. And we're going to go ahead with our cherry cobbler, and we're going to stamp our greeting for the inside of the card. Now I'm going to stay with the same greeting because I tried to use all the stamps, just use stamps from one stamp set. So I wasn't adding too many stamp sets to these cards. And I'm going to just go ahead and stamp that. And move that off to the side for a minute. So here's our inside. So let's go ahead and adhere that to our base. And that's not the right size, is it? There we go. So we're going to adhere this to this one, and we'll cut another one for the outside. So here's this, and now we're going to pop it up on the, or pop it in the inside. And that doesn't cut right either. I don't know what I was doing with these. So we're going to fix it. So with this, I'm just going to go ahead and adhere the white to the inside, which you can do and not add another layer for weight. And then this one, let's make sure this is the right size for here. So we're going to go ahead and go with that one. And then we're going to work with our layer for the white layer for the outside. And that fits. So I'm not sure what happened with the other, but let's finish up. So now we're going to use our Versamark. And I'm going to bring in my supplies for this. And I just want to show you what we have here. This is in the new catalog. If you don't have it, it's great value, and it is great for, I love it for heat embossing. You get the tray, you get these little tongs or reverse tongs, you get the brush, and you get the Stampin' Buddy, which I like. So I am going to heat emboss, and I want to remove the static from this paper because I don't want that gold embossing powder sticking too much. So we're going to bring in our Versamark, and I'm going to stamp 2 images. We're going to stamp the longer ornament. And before we do that, let's make sure it's clean. And then I'm going to go ahead and ink it up with the Versamark. And I'm going to stamp it from here. And I don't know if you can see that, but hopefully you can see on the light the Versamark. Now I'm going to come in with another one, and we're going to use the little, looks like a bauble. I'm going to use this one, and we're going to go ahead and stamp that over to the other side. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to pick up my stamp, and let's ink it up. And I'm going to put this one here. All right. Now I'm going to lay this down in my tray, and I'm going to take my gold embossing powder, and I'm just going to liberally sprinkle it on my paper. And that's way more than I need, but I'd rather have too much. And that way, if I have to dip it back through, which doesn't look like I do, I'm just going to tap it to get off the excess. And then I have this little brush that I'm just gently going to make sure that I remove what's there. Now, if you want to add a little bit extra and get a little bit more covering, I just simply take mine, run it back through, and tap it off. And then I'm going to use my brush Now, if you have a paintbrush, that will work well too. And now we're going to heat emboss. So let me move that off to the side. And I am going to bring in my heat gun. And I'm going to turn it on for a minute to let it heat up. And now I'm just going to hold it with the tongs. And when I'm heat embossing, I hold it in place. I don't kind of move it around. So, and I follow it through as it turns shiny until that image is done. And I'm going to move on over to the next image and do the same. And just like magic, it embosses nicely. Now you don't want to overheat it, because two things can happen if you overheat it. You're going to either flatten out your embossed image, or you're going to burn your paper. So that's pretty much where I want that. Now I want to fill in some color. So I've pulled in the images or the watermarks that will actually color those images. And I want to do those in the cherry cobbler. Now again, because it's photopolymer, I'm going to bring in my mat and we're going to do, I'm going to stamp off because I want these a lighter color. I don't want them that dark. And I might even stamp off again. And then I'm going to go in right over my embossing and stamp it. I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Stamp off. And with this one, I'm going to leave a little bit darker. And we're going to go ahead and stamp. All right. So they look watermarked. And now I'm going to go ahead and I went ahead and popped up or cut out a circle from the Stylish Shapes dies and thought I would pop it up on here. Now you have enough room that you could just stamp here, but I thought I'd change it up a little and we'd pop it up. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to use 3 just because it's a small circle, but I want to make sure that it's pretty well supported. And I'm going to go ahead in here and just put that down. And then I want to bring in my festive dies to finish up. These are, I love these. They are also in the mini catalog, and they have cherry cobbler, soft succulent, silver and gold. And I'm going to grab my pick tool here, move that out of the way, or even my my pick tool, and let's use some gold on this. So I'm going to go ahead and let's put one here. I always work in odd numbers. So with this one, I may even go ahead and put 5 on. Just want to pick up some of that bling. I'm going to add another. Let's put one here. And then I think I'm going to add one up at the top. And that looks like plenty. Let's move this out of the way and this. And now we're ready to adhere this to our green and adhere it to the front of the card. I'm just going to add my glue. Oops. And we're going to go ahead and put that on the front. Now I noticed as I turned it over, I had a little smudge and probably off my hands of red on the front of this. So let me show you what you can do with that. Somewhere here I got ink on that from here because I turned it over on the mat. So I'm going in with my color lifter, and I'm gently going to work this back and forth. Now it has to dry to remove the color. So wait for that. And then if you need to, you can go back over it. So I want to bring all the cards back in to show you. Here's this one. And this one, again, different colors picked up on. This is the garden green with the pear pizzazz. This